Oh, here he is. Good evening and welcome to the Audit Committee meeting for Monday, February 7th. I think we'll just start with introductions before we dive into our agenda. My name is Chris Ballin. I am a board trustee and the chair of this committee.
Hi, I'm David Warner, a board trustee.
Hi,
Lisa
Michael
Raymond,
Owens.
Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Michael Owens, Community Volunteer.
Amy Ashley Moore, District Treasurer.
Chris Lazari, Community Volunteer.
I believe Trustee Mayers is in a call-in instead of video because she's en route. And Mr. Tobin?
Yeah, my name is John Tobin. I'm the internal auditor for the district. Good evening.
Okay, good evening. Okay, well, the agenda for tonight is pretty brief, but let me pull up our pull it up for you. Okay, so for the first item is to adopt our meeting minutes from the last time we met in December. Those minutes are hidden behind this little panel of people. So how do I do this? Let's shrink. There we go. Okay, so for the purposes of transcription, I'm just going to read them very quickly. Our last audit committee meeting was on December 1st, called to order at approximately 7:33 p.m. Attendees included Laser Alert, Dr. Linda Iverson, Christopher Lazari, Amy Ashley Moore, Tracy Mayers, Michael K. Owens, Lisa Raymond, Chris Fallon, and David Warner. At that meeting, we adopted the meeting minutes from the November 8th meeting, and we reviewed the draft corrective action plan for our external or independent audit. After reviewing the draft of that plan, we recommended that the board accept the corrective action plan at their next meeting on December 7th, and that motion was approved. Subsequently, the Board of Education did adopt the corrective action plan, and we had some follow-up actions, and that was it. Any suggestions to amend these minutes, or is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve these minutes.
Any second?
Second, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Minutes adopted. And close that tab. Okay, so today our main goal is to review the risk assessment report prepared by our internal auditor, Mr. Tobin, and to recommend which area to investigate in depth. Now, I just have a quick housekeeping question before I turn the discussion over to you, Mr. Tobin, and that is the fact that this is labeled fulfilling the state mandate for the year ending June 30th, 2022. And I was under, I think, the misguided understanding that this is actually for the year ending 2021. Can you just clarify for me?
Sure. Yeah, we did a risk assessment for the year ending 2021. It's probably close to this time last year. So the state wants us to go in each school year. So that would be for June 30th, and do a risk assessment and look at all the areas of the district and come back to the audit committee and to the board with a recommendation for an area to do a deep dive. So it's kind of a two-step process. So by doing this, we're fulfilling the mandate for this year we're in, June of 2022.
Okay. Okay, and then Mr. Warner, another housekeeping item. I could not find, does the board formally have to accept these risk assessment reports?
My recollection is that for the external audit, we had a bunch of resolutions, but for the internal audit process, it was far less formal.
Okay.
So I don't remember doing corrective action plans and all that sort of thing, having board approval of the internal audits, but I could be wrong.
I've seen them for previous years. I just did not see one for the year ended June 2021. So if it's not technically required, we can discuss that, I guess, offline. I just want to make sure we've followed everything we're supposed to follow. And if we need to do a
You're not
backup.
going to hurt anything by having a corrective action plan for risk assessment.
Okay. Well, even just an acceptance of the internal audit report. I think we need just to verify if that was officially done or if we need to make
Okay.
sure. Okay, so saying all that.
Can I just comment on that in your question there, Chris? I think it's a good question. So about I think it was 3 years ago, the state controllers department office started mandating that the district upload their responses to the internal audits for the area, not for the risk assessment. So you're right, but it's not this report. It'll be the next report that needs a district response and then an upload to the controls website. I'm sure
So what we
Lisa
did-
knows about
Okay, so
that.
that's a deep dive. Okay.
So
Right.
the deep dive that we reviewed in October 21, we reviewed this as a committee, and I believe then that would have been uploaded to the
Correct.
system, and the board may have approved that for upload.
And if we didn't, we should.
We will go back and do that, which I'll verify after this meeting. Okay. Okay, so Mr. Tobin, I don't know if you want to drive the document or if you want me to drive it while you're speaking.
If you don't mind, that would be fantastic. It just makes it easier.
Okay.
So
Sure.
if you would go to page 3, please.
Just 3.
That's
That's 2.
2.
Okay, so we
Yeah,
gotta go.
3. So this is just to give you guys a little bit of, background. This is our overview of our procedures that we do for the risk assessment. So you could see there, we interview key personnel, including top admin. We evaluate forms and documentation in the business processes. So we go through and confirm what's being told to us as internal controls. We always look at your policies and procedures on the website. We took a look at, spent a lot of time on technology the district uses, and we did some flowchart work that we have internally. And we also reviewed audit reports by the State Controller's Office, as well as your external audit report. And then down below, it tells you who we spoke with, and you could see it's mostly the administration team, and also buildings and grounds, benefits, payroll, accounts payable, transportation, claims, purchasing. I think I mentioned technology already. Yeah, technology. So we cover a lot of different areas of the district. I just want everybody to be aware of that. If you go down, Chris, to page 4, yep, that perfect. So this is kind of our explanation of risk ratings. And this is the math we use to come up with low, medium, or high risks. So we basically assign variables to key areas of the district. And we look at things like dollar volume, adequacy of personnel to handle, complexity of activity, management interest, that would be, from the board, adequacy of procedures, and then adequacy of internal controls. And so basically we come up with an equation for each area. And if you go to the next page, there you go. There's what we come out with. So basically you see your risks from 2021, and then your risk score and ratings from 2022. Now you could see you guys have stayed in the medium range for the most part. The highest risk you have is grants and buildings and grounds, then technology, and then it falls down from there. HR and payroll, revenue purchasing, extra classroom, employee benefits. And you can see we also have a chart down below that where we kind of track and, look at what areas. Last area we did for the district with the deep dive was grants for June 30th, 2021. And then there's early childhood program in 19, student activities in 17. And we put a little asterisk next to the recommended areas for the next deep dive. So we chose 2 to recommend. Of course, you should choose 1. purchasing, accounts payable, or human resources and payroll. I'm going to go through the comments in a minute, but both of those areas have high dollar volume that go through. Payroll is a huge expense for the district. You want to make sure that that's proper and processing with authority from the board, and all the salaries are proper and authorized. Purchasing and payables, another extremely important functional area of the district. Procurement, you want to make sure that things are bid where necessary and have proper authorization and backup. So those are the two areas. We'll come back to that in a minute. If you scroll up now, please, to page 2. Yeah, so this is kind of a summary of the areas that we noticed where there's internal control improvements, as well as areas that could be, we consider, could be improved in the future. So the first top 10 there are all internal control improvements since our last review. So we actually go back and check from the prior review to the current to see what things changed, how things changed. So the claims auditor, the first one, audits payroll checks and calculations to ensure payroll accuracy. So that's good. The districts that do that usually wind up better, because there are some times where payroll errors occur. And if you get them picked up by the claims auditor, that's excellent. You guys are using a shared drive for employee access, for reimbursement forms and other things, making it easier to gain access to your purchase requests and stuff like that. So that's excellent. Changes related to insurance coverage are now approved by the superintendent before the benefits clerk processed the change. That's a big improvement. Purchasing clerk periodically reviews the vendor list and Envision and makes sure unused vendors are inactive. We like when you inactivate older vendors, so you can't mistakenly pay somebody the wrong vendor. So we don't want that. Next one is the technology improvement. You're utilizing Virtue as a second level of email encryption and data protection. So we spent a lot of time looking at, the new controls in place for technology. That's one of them. There's another one. There's a cyber security training program that's been implemented. That's excellent. That's making sure that, people understand when to open an email, when not to. And, they're told if they fail that test. And so that's been given periodically. So there's a new online through OptiGate, new access for payroll stubs and W-2s. So employees are able now to go in and look at their tax info. They don't have to keep, calling the payroll department and asking for copies, and all that kind of thing. So that's a good improvement. There's a class management program, which allows teachers to monitor student activities, student device activity. It's called HAPARA. So that's a good improvement. The fizzing test, I just talked about that. We put that in, as well as an intrusion detection test. So those are excellent control upgrades. And then we implemented and documented an acceptable use policy for district vehicles. All good protocols in the district. Some of the areas that we found that we would recommend for further improvement is the claims order reviews the payroll after it's been processed. So then if there is an error that's found, you have to fix it in the next period. It would be good if the claims auditor could align her visits with the payroll before it's actually processed. And that's something the district's going to work towards. Yeah.
Question.
Sure.
So I think there's a note somewhere along here where you say you've only got one person working on payroll.
Correct.
So we really should have two people on payroll. And so then are you saying that there should actually be the claims auditor should be there too? So actually 3 people should be there?
So I think if for us, internal controls and separation, having more than one person handling things is really important in a good system. So the fact that you guys are down to one and have the claims auditor kind of looking over our shoulder, that's a very good thing. Now, if you add another person to the process and they cross-check each other's work, that's even better. So it's hard for a district that has one clerk to be, the clerk can't process and
Right.
check her work. So
Right.
you need somebody doing that. So I think you guys are covered by having the claims auditor do it. I guess on a wish list, it would be good if you had another person in payroll, even if it was part-time, just to help out, and then the payroll clerk could review the work better.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Extra classroom uses Excel to track the club activity. The problem with Excel, I guess I'd rather see Excel than a manual system, but Excel is, you can make math errors in Excel, so you got to always watch it. So we've seen some other districts using software that specializes in extra classroom activity. There's one called EPIs, and it's not expensive, and it's like a job cost, or it's by club. So for instance, the graduating class of 2022, if they ask for a printout and you use that software, you can easily print out the income and expenses that go through that club. And you can also reconcile it to your bank, in total. So we think that's a pretty good system. The district switched from School Dude to BOSI software, but I'm not sure. I think we're still in the early stages of that. And so we're not completely using the software to the best of its ability. So that's something we like to see. Improvement on inventory control for buildings and grounds assets. That's a tough thing to get to, but we like to see that happen in the district. Better control over inventory so we know where the tools are. Preventative maintenance schedule. Again, the School Dude used to have it does have a preventative maintenance feature in it. So you can actually schedule out what maintenance you think the district will need. And then the last one is the extra classroom activities. So
Hold it.
Yeah,
So
sure.
you just just moved from School Dude to BOSI's. So does BOSI's also have it?
Yes, BOSI's has a feature you can use. Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. The administration. This is something I think is important, very important to the district. The administration of the extra classroom activities. It has been historically done in Greenberg School District and the business office. And, all the other districts we go to, I would say 99% have the administration done out at the schools. And for you guys, the high school is the biggest part of the extra classroom activities. And so what ends up happening is instead of it being handled in the business office, and the treasurer ends up doing a lot of the activities or bank reconciliations, cutting checks, posting receipts, that would be done by the treasurer at the high school level. And then that treasurer in turn reports to the central treasurer in the administrative office. And then she takes it from there and posts and puts it into the accounting system. So we think that is a better system than the one that's in place now, where everything is brought to the administrative office and all the accounting work is done there.
Okay, John, you have a couple questions. David?
Okay, so the administration is currently located in the high school.
Right.
But we initially had a system in which, going back a few years, you had a member of the teachers union who was a treasurer. And so it was a sort of a less centralized system. And then we got into trouble. And then we went through a sort of a massive overhaul and educational process, and then moved it into the business office because the other system that you're talking about didn't work for us. So now it sounds like you're advocating us going back to the system that didn't work. I'm not quite clear. Well, I mean, have you looked back and seen the distant past, and how do we not go back to the problems that came with the old system?
I do remember, David, yeah, that I remember the problems that we had with the extra classroom activities. And I do remember the reason that it was brought in-house. However, I think we should try again to put it back, to somebody different at the high school, somebody who is, most districts, they have somebody like the head of the math department, or, somebody else that has the time, and then that person interacts directly with the student treasurer, and it's a better system. And then that from there, you could bring it over to your treasurer. I think we did that here because it was historically very loose. And I think that maybe it might be the right time to put it back to where it should be. I think we should do it carefully and make sure there are controls in place when we do it. But that's how the state likes extra classroom to be run, with the student involved, with the treasurer at the high school level, who's usually some type of teacher. And then the administrative team takes over from there, and then puts that into the financial statements and then reports to the board that way.
What sort of training do you recommend? What sort of software should they be using? What are the controls that need to be in place to make sure?
Okay, so the number 2 above is the EPI software. I'd strongly recommend that. And I could recommend some other school districts that are using it, are happy with it. So I would start with that as sort of like a build around, that would be your centerpiece. And then I think that, your treasurer, your district treasurer should be comfortable with the person that is going to be the main, the extra classroom treasurer out at the high school. I think that's, the relationship there should be strong.
We
And
need
then
to
there's-
renegotiate our contracts again?
renegotiate contracts?
Yes, we had a guarantee in our teacher's contract for this position, and then we went through a negotiation cycle and changed it.
I mean,
David,
Yeah,
I'm just going to interject here. I'm
Go
not
ahead.
sure if, first of all, I'm going to say I have the same memories as you, David, of where we were a few years ago and why we made the changes we made. So for me personally, and I'd love to hear Ms. Raymond's take on this. I'm sorry, you're the internal auditor, you know so much more than I do, but I am hesitant to make that change, to suggest making that change this year. Maybe in a year. I think there are some other things we might need to iron out before we might want to look at that change. I don't know. I don't know how much I can elaborate right now without crossing certain lines. So I'm hesitant as a person who's still learning the boundaries. I also just want to point out that the extra classroom activities in the past, and I mean, currently it's a little weird because of COVID, but in the past, it's not just been the high school. There have been clubs and activities at Bailey, which also had funding that moved into those accounts. So it wasn't really just one building. So that's another little wrinkle that we need to look at. So I know, Ms. Raymond, we're not, making an active decision tonight, but I do think, David, your last question is valid. I just don't know that this is a forum to discuss that aspect.
Can I?
You want me to comment? Okay.
Ms. Mears.
Yeah, I was just going to co-sign with my fellow trustees. I too remember the stuff that we went through. My main concern would be hearing, and I know you had started to talk about the controls that would be in place, because I think that's most important.
Yeah. So, I too remember when this came in-house, and at that point I agreed too, because, historically, the extra classroom activities for the district were very loose, and there were issues. I remember distinctly there was a bus bill we had a big issue with, and there were some other trips that were taken. And you're right, it was like at the grammar school level or something like that. And so those were things that we weren't used to seeing, and We talked about this. And that's, from that, it was saying, let's take it inside. We can't trust what's going on out there. And that's what was done. Having said that, it's still I think the procedure that occurs the most in all districts is with a separate treasurer handling this stuff. Some of the controls you asked about, I think the most important one is the system. The EPI system would be the hub where it does all the accounting. There's a pamphlet the state issues. It's called pamphlet number 2. It's all about extra classroom activities and the right way to set up extra classroom activities, and you could build it from the ground up. And I'm not advocating that we just, recklessly put this back out there, but I think it's something that the district should start looking to and thinking about. And I just think it's going to be a better internal control fit eventually. I think, you'll get new people that you could, train with these things. And I think it, like I said, in all the other districts we go to, it is done separately.
Does anyone else have any other questions regarding this topic before I ask a follow-up? I can't see everyone's hand, so if you're not using the electronic hand, I don't know if you're trying. Okay. So let's agree that maybe we want to move there at some point, whether it's sooner rather than later. You alluded to the student treasurer being involved and working with the extra classroom activity treasurer. From my understanding of the way our clubs work, each club might have their own officers. It's not like there's one overall student treasurer for all of the extracurricular, co-curricular activities. How do other schools structure that student involvement?
So you have like a building level treasurer. We used to have one. I remember interviewing her. I don't recall her name at the moment, but we did have one. And then there is like a stipend person usually involved in the clubs. And then you have a student, like a president of that club. And so there's interaction between the three of them. And then from there, it gets reported up to our treasurer, who updates the financial statements. So it's hard to have that relationship when you're doing it all, through the district treasurer. So you're missing a lot of those things that are usually there. I just think it would be a good fit for you guys at some point down the road.
So maybe step 1 would be to look at the current contracts as Mr. Warner alluded to, and step 2, maybe to look at our policy on this. I know we have a policy or 2 on this, just to make sure that everything's in line, and then obviously take into account the suggestions you're making. And then once all of those are aligned, see where we are as far as the next step. Is that?
I think that's great. I think that'd be excellent.
Ms. Raymond? Yes, Tracy?
I was going to say, just listening to you, Mr. Tobin, it sounds to me like this is it's going to be a pretty detailed setup, where on multiple levels you have different people trained, starting even as base level as the students. So it sounds like this will be a whole undertaking of training as well. Is that how this kind of rolls out normally?
Yes. Yeah, there'd be, you'd have to train. I mean, your treasurer is doing this now. So she would be, involved in rolling this back out to somebody responsible, a teacher or, somebody, one of the department heads or something. And then, that person would get trained on how to do this. It's not that difficult, and the software will help a lot, having the right software.
I'm remembering that the way we got to the point we're at is that we tried to implement the system you're talking about first, and it wasn't successful. And then we moved to this system. So it's got, whatever we do this time has to be different from what we did last time.
Right.
So maybe EPIs will do it, but
Yeah, you didn't have software.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking so much about the training, the controls, because, we're also hesitant, but I think we're trying to look at the possibility to do this. But of course, we would need to make sure that we have the controls, but most importantly, the training. And I heard what you said, that our current treasurer could, I guess, do the training. But again, I think it would need to be very systematic, very spelled out. I think our treasurer is very busy. So how are we going to roll out the training program as well as all the controls that are in place?
May I suggest that Ms. Ashley Moore, our treasurer, is on the meeting with us? I don't know if, I don't mean to put you on the spot, so if you're not prepared, that's fine. But did you have anything you wanted to contribute to this part of our conversation, Ms.
Well,
Ashley?
I think that trustee or President Mears actually hit it on the nose in terms of how busy I am. So I'd really like to get an idea of what that training would look like before I could say, I'll definitely have to have, I'll have time to do that. And of course I have to, talk with Ms. Raymond as well. So.
Hopefully in the long run, it will take something away from you that you're spending a lot of time on now, and you could be in more of a review type of system, or, critiquing, instead of being directly involved.
If I go back to page 3 and I look at
Yeah,
the
I'm not.
list of who did what, there was another person on staff who appeared to be the extra classroom treasurer, and it wasn't on the shoulders of the treasurer at that point. And maybe it's migrated there now.
Absolutely. No, it has not.
It has not. Okay.
It has not. So I'm definitely, capable of training, however, because I'm not the central treasurer that handles the extra, classroom activity, it would just be, I need to see what this system looks like, what that entails, and then speak with Ms. Raymond to make sure that I'm not, taken away from what I need to be doing as the district treasurer.
And that might be a good first step. I could introduce you to one of the treasurers that are doing this currently in one of the other districts locally in Westchester. And maybe that would be a good way to do it. And you could take a look yourself and see if you think that's something that would benefit the, what the system we have in place now.
Okay, I think it sounds like we have some action points for this, but I think it's not really the focus of our conversation this evening since it's not one of your main recommendations. So let's move on to the next part of the presentation, and we'll discuss this again at a further date to see where we move from there.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So the pages that follow behind the what we had went over earlier, the risk scores, are basically just more of an elaboration of what we just discussed. So a lot of these recommendations, particularly the new ones, are what we've talked about on the summary page there. And so the next real important point is to pick an area to do a deep dive in the spring. And that would be the next step. So we recommended purchasing and payables or human resources and payroll.
Do you have any pros or cons you can elaborate to us to help us make that decision, or any? It seems like they're evenly rated, 68 and 67.
Right, yeah, they're very close, but they have a high amount of dollar volume. I would say I would lean towards human resources and payroll. I think that's a really important one. And I think, we did have some changeover last year in the district in the bunch of positions. So I think it would be good to look at that.
Ms. Raymond, or does anyone else have any comments about that? Any questions? Should we?
I concur. I like HR and payroll.
I agree.
Okay, sounds like there's a consensus to choose HR and payroll as our deep dive.
I have a quick question just in regards to the previous deep dive. It looks like we just did grants, aids, and grants, aid, and physical operations last year. But maybe, John, it looks like the risk level went up this year.
Right,
So can you just elaborate on how that is?
sure. So when we looked at that area, there were a number of recommendations, observations and recommendations that we found that needed to be implemented. And those are still being worked on.
Okay.
So that's why we scored that way.
So as far as the timeline, let me pull up. Let's pull it. As far as the timeline, this is actually 22. We added that. For the deep dive being concluded, are we looking at sometime before April or
I would say May.
May?
Yeah, we're done by May.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Warner?
We've got a hiring process that has to take place, I believe. There have been disruptions in staffing. So when you determine when you're going to go in and do the actual work, I assume you don't want to go to somebody who's at their first day on the job. So what's the expected time that it will take to replace this position? The payroll clerk.
No, we have a payroll clerk. We don't have an
Payroll.
accounts payable clerk.
Okay. Never mind.
Okay. So let me get this straight. Okay, so we expect to be completed by May. So we'll set a meeting for sometime in May. And
Perfect.
then at that point, is that when we develop the corrective action plan? Like that could be
Correct.
presented at the same time, the findings and the corrective action plan at the same time, or?
Yes,
So
Okay.
Amy and I will work with Mr. Tobin once he has his finding and his draft. Before we present it to you, we'll have our corrective action plan in place.
Okay,
for your
and
recommendation.
am I wrong when I understood that it's needed to be filed by April?
I have
yeah,
to
no,
look
it
that up.
doesn't. It
does
doesn't, no.
Okay. So that's good. All right. I did have one other question on a topic that you brought up in your internal report, and it's a question for anyone who could answer it. It's regarding we've mentioned in various meetings about an asset inventory.
So we can do that every 5 years
every 5
with
years.
our insurance company. And what happens every year is I instruct Amy, correct me, she's not the accounts payable. What is Mairead?
Purchasing clerk.
The purchasing clerk. She keeps a track of our 200 codes, and anything that is over $500, she reports to our insurance company. So they keep it on our asset inventory. But NICER, our insurance company, gives us that inventory every 5 years that we give to our auditors.
Okay, so when I was researching before this meeting, I think an asset inventory was begun in 2016. I don't know when it concluded.
Oh,
Then COVID times hit, so I don't know, are we due
nope,
for
I
that?
think it was done, I'm pretty sure it was done last year.
Okay. Okay. So can we
We need
just,
to do that for our insurance policy.
okay. I just couldn't, I did
Mhm.
a brief little research and
Yep.
couldn't find it. Okay. So that seems like it's well in hand. All right, that was the only other question I had on the rest of the report. Did anyone else have any other questions? Because I can't see all the hands, so just speak up since we're a small group. No? Okay, is there any
Just
business?
a couple of typos. Page 3, we prepared flowcharts which illustrate. Page 3, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, seventh paragraph down. It says we prepared flowcharts which illustrate instead of illustrates, I think.
Thank you. I will fix that.
And then, let's see. PPC, I think you've answered my questions. Any substantive questions, I think you've already covered. Page 9, bottom of the page, last paragraph, last sentence. Due this area's impact should be due to this area's impact on the budget. Page 9,
Thank you.
due to this area's, okay. And then top of page 10. Why don't it? Due to COVID-19, there has been limited extra classroom activities. Should be have been limited extra classroom activities. And otherwise, I'm good.
Thank you.
Trustee Valen, I just want to give the committee an update. As I told you previously, Amy and I are working on, we submitted the corrective action plan for the external audit. And it was submitted, and now, even though we gave the range of when everything would be updated. So for example, if something was cited, Amy and I said, we will have it enacted by September 2021. They want to know the exact date that we did it. So we will be updating that and getting it to the committee to get to the board so that we can get it to the state.
Okay. And you want this on the work session on March 1st, so it can be approved at March 15th.
I would like that, yes.
Regular
if
meeting.
possible. Mhm.
So we need to see the committee see that. Okay, so if the committee wants the opportunity to review that amended corrective action plan before it goes to the board on March 1st, we don't have many dates before then to do that. So we could either look at Monday, March 28th, because we're unable to meet the prior week due to school break.
You mean February 28th?
I meant,
Yes,
I
yes.
apologize, February 28th.
Are we all not available during that winter break?
I believe that the school employees are not available during the winter break.
No, we are. Amy and I are.
Oh,
We're
you-
off Amy and I are off the 21st and the 25th unless we want to take vacation.
Then we may need to meet in person
Oh, the
because not all
22nd.
school employees are available during the break.
So you guys are working the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th?
Yes, provided that we don't take vacation days.
Are you planning to be here, Miss Ashley Moore? I don't know, she might not be here.
I
I'm
am
just-
not, I am visiting colleges, so.
Oh, you're not gonna be?
Okay.
Oh, no pressure. I just,
Well,
Don't make it
and then-
difficult.
President Mayers, if it was okay with you, could we get it on the March 15th if it wasn't on the March 1st?
yeah.
Because it has already been previously on?
I mean, if it's something that's pressing that we can make an exception, we try not to do that to avoid
Right.
any surprises.
but
But if it's
It's
something,
already been on a board agenda. You've already approved when Amy I can, get it. This is just finalizing the dates.
Let's put the placeholder on the work session
yeah,
agenda for March 1st.
Okay.
Okay.
yeah.
And
that's a
then
good-
just to confirm, because this committee has already reviewed the corrective action dates and you're only plugging in exact dates, is this an area, Mr. Warner, you've got more experience, is this an area that we do want, this committee would prefer to review before it goes to the board, or?
The committee gets to decide what it wants to do. I'm okay if the only thing that you're doing is adding exact dates. I don't feel like I need a meeting for that, but if other people want to take a look at it, poll the committee.
Any other opinions on this topic?
Or could we email
You tuned out a little, I couldn't hear.
allowed to be for email for?
Could it be done or could it be looked at over email in case there are
Yeah.
questions?
We could look at it over email and decide if it's worth having a meeting.
Right, because I'm not sure then if we'd violate open meetings law if we're.
Right, but we're allowed to communicate all we want in order to schedule a meeting, right? So you send us the document, you say, would you like to have a meeting? And we all go, no, we don't need a meeting, or yes, we do. And then depending on what we say, we have a meeting or we don't.
I'm also going to say that this committee, we're probably wasting Mr. Tobin's time before we discuss this. I apologize.
That's
But I
okay.
was going to say, this committee did say that in March or April, we would get together to review the progress made on, we were going to give the business department a quarter to enact some of the changes that they were suggesting. We could choose a March date before March 15th, perhaps, to do both things at the same time. Take a look at the dates that they're submitting to NICEAD and getting that progress report. How do people feel about that option? Ms. Raymond, specifically right now, is that enough time? Is it giving you enough time to be able to give us an update, a progress report on
That's
those
fine.
items?
That's fine. As long as it's okay with the committee and the board, I'm fine with it.
Okay, so let's see. I guess our choices right now are, do we have a committee meeting before March 1st to review the suggested dates for the amended corrective action plan? Or do we do a meeting later in March to learn those dates and get a progress report on implementations of the cap? Let's do a consensus here. Mr. Warner, what do you prefer?
Later in March.
Mr. Owens,
Later in March.
Ms. Maris,
Yes, I'm okay with later March.
Mr. Lazari?
Later in March.
Okay, Ms. Moore, Ms. Raymond, if it's acceptable to you.
Fine.
Okay, well, you know what, we'll shoot an email around to pick a date for that. It will be after March 1st. It'll be between February 28th and March 1st, just for everyone's reference. Okay,
You mean February 28th and March 15th?
yes, yes, between February 28th and March 15th. Okay,
Excuse me.
okay, is there anything else we need to cover today?
Next steps on the agenda.
Well, we've said March 15th is when it will be presented to the board. We're going to have our meeting somewhere between Feb 28th and March 15th.
Is there a reason why we're trying, is there a reason why we couldn't do the 28th itself? Is it because we're just getting? are they just-
For the dates alone?
Oh, no, just to review everything that we said. we were
Everything.
gonna do. Is that too soon? I'm just looking at the calendar. March looks really full, although maybe it's just visually full to me. But it looks full.
It's within the range.
I mean, there's no committee meetings the week of March 7th or 11th, according to unless there's some that have been scheduled that I don't know about.
It's a lot of meeting. Oh, maybe the times are earlier in the day. Okay.
Could be wrong. Since we're off school for a week in February, I do want to give the business office the opportunity to, make more, get more of that cleanup done for the CAP before they give us a progress report, if that's okay, Ms. Maris.
Nope, sounds good.
Okay. Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Mr. Warner, you look like you have something you'd like to say.
No, I'm just checking to see if there's anything in next steps that needs to be taken care of before we adjourn.
The only other thing was the cap, and we said that would be done around May,
And there's something about engagement letters. Okay,
which will come May or June.
that's fine.
There's currently.
Second,
Okay.
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We're adjourned for the evening. Thank you, Mr. Tobin. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
My pleasure.
Thank
Good luck.
you.
2 weeks, and look for an email on the dates.
Have a good night.
Good night, Mr. Lewis. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.